for Dominguez. Nassif on the other side of the battlefield has brought Simic.
Yeah, and I have played, unsurprisingly, a lot of this Gruul deck, and this is one of the matchups that you don't really want to run into very much. Specifically, if they do have ramp into Wicked Wolf, it is a really tough time for you, especially in game one, because Javier chose to include Domri's ambush only in his sideboard. But looking at the hands right now...
Yikes, double Disdainful Stroke, but look how it matches up against Javier's opener, at least currently. Pelt Collector into Gruul Spellbreaker, maybe a once upon a time to find a 2-drop in there.
Yeah, that's a really strong draw for Javier. If you're going to win this matchup, going first is obviously very important, and also having that Pelt Collector. Pelt Collector is, quietly pretty much the most important card in this deck. You really want to be able to get the pressure on as quickly as possible, and Pelt Collector does that and can get out of hand. Does answer specifically Oko quite well because it grows with those +1/+1 counters, so they can't neutralize it by turning it into an elk.
Nassif's going to kick things off with Temple of Mystery, but he sees Questing Beast on top of his library. He already actually has one in his hand as well. Curious to see if he keeps it there. He does. He wants a backup.
And crucially for Nassif, there is no turn 2 play for Javier, so Pelt Collector only gets in for the 1. It does mean that that Beast into Beast for Nassif is looking pretty good. Yeah,
the Zertog Goblin was one card deeper there for Dominguez, so he's going to have to settle for Spellbreaker into Spellbreaker here. Not too shabby itself. Now, why does Javier make the Spellbreaker a 4/4 here rather than giving it haste?
Questing Beast is the really big reason. Questing Beast, Wicked Wolf, both are creatures that come down. You really want the 4/4 body for the Spellbreaker. And here, Nassif plays a Questing Beast. Usually you see Questing Beast basically come into play and attack right away.
Yes.
Usually, like, I click the attack button in the bottom right before the animation even ends for those 3 heads coming up. But here, he would much rather have the Questing Beast back, be able to prevent the Pelt Collector from attacking. And it will be the Spellbreaker that comes in. Does get the block. This is pretty good for Javier, because it does mean he gets another counter on this Pelt Collector. So it becomes a 3/3, and then the next 4/4 Spellbreaker means that he has a pair of 4/4s that can actually get in and do damage past the Questing Beast.
Wow, and there's that Oko just in time as you mentioned it. This Gruul deck, with the ability to put +1/+1 counters on its creatures, means that turning them into elks not quite as good.
It's not, but just the food from Oko is very powerful. This is an aggressive deck. This is a deck that really wants to close out the game relatively quickly, has a fairly low curve in general. Only 3 copies of Skargan Hellkite really at the top end for Javier, outside of Embercleave, which again is another thing you want to end the game quickly. And frankly, if you don't get enough damage in early, Oko can just turn Embercleave into an elk, and that can shut down your ability to punch through their ground defense as well.
Another interesting decision here on whether or not to attack with Questing Beast. Ultimately, it leads to Nassif getting a decision on which creature he'd like to trade with, assuming that Dominguez comes into the red zone, and he decides not to attack.
It's a kind of interesting decision point for Javier. He picked up the Skargan Hellkite, and he can play that with haste. It does have Riot, so you can choose either haste or +1/+1 counter. If he plays it with haste, he gets in the 4 damage now, but by giving a +1/+1 counter, he does threaten the activated ability, which can only really be answered by Oko, which then leaves you with a 5/5, or a 4/4 rather than a 3/3.
Well, Dominguez is going to play one way here. He's going to send everything into the red zone, and the Questing Beast is going to jump in front of the Pelt Collector for a trade. But in the meantime, Nassif does take a significant amount of damage. 8 to the face there. He's down to 9.
Ooh, Nissa. Nissa's powerful, but is Nissa too late?
Right, the 3/3s aren't matching up well on the ground versus the Spellbreaker as it stands, and the Skargan Hellkite still threatening the air.
Yeah, Oko can turn that Hellkite into a 3/3, but right now with Questing Beast number 2 dead, there's not really that many ways for Nassif to just answer even a 3/3 on the ground. He can play Nissa. Nissa can untap one of the lands, get a 3/3 in play for him. If he does hit the breeding pool, he can still cast Disdainful Stroke, which stops the possibility of a Questing Beast or another Hellkite coming down. But also does mean that if he is forced to block, that he loses a more valuable resource, because this is both a forest that generates multiple mana and one of his blue sources.
Javier Dominguez runs the numbers right quick and says, you know what, I think I got you here, buddy. A couple of hasty creatures, only one can get blocked.
Yep.
That's 4/7/10 for the rest. And Gruul Smash is the mode for Javier Dominguez here in game number 1. He found the right pieces.
Yeah, that's just game. That's 10 damage coming through past the breeding pool. No Brazen Borrowers or anything like that for Nassif here. And he will take a important game number 1, because I do think that despite Javier getting the Domer's ambushes in from his sideboard, I believe the Aether Gusts are much more powerful against him than his sideboard cards are against Nassif.
And we see those Aether Gusts immediately back into the main deck there, or I should say into the main deck there for Nassif. He takes out 3 of the Disdainful Strokes for 3 Aether Gusts.
Yeah, and Nassif has a lot of powerful sideboard cards here. I actually played quite a bit with specifically this build of the Simic Food deck in preparation for casting this event, and Lovestruck Beast is a brick wall against a lot of those creatures on the Gruul side. You saw that game. What was so powerful about what was going on for Javier was that he had a bunch of 4/4s. So every single one of his creatures from Pelt Collector on up was trading with Questing Beast. Well, if you got a Lovestruck Beast in there, they're not trading. They're just running straight into this 5/5 and dying.
Interestingly, it looks like Nassif is taking out 4 copies of Questing Beast here.
And I think we saw why that is in the previous game. Questing Beast just is not that good against this deck, which either goes over the top in the air or ends up having smaller creatures, cheaper creatures that can end up trading with the Questing Beast. It becomes even worse when you are factoring in Domer's Ambush, because then even a 3/3, even just I was gonna say Harpooner. It is Harpooner, but I was gonna say Gruul Harpooner. It's a Cruel Harpooner.
Crawl
Harpooner. Which can take out a goose, then use the Domer's Ambush to punch a Questing Beast in the face. So I like cutting them for Nassif, even though they do seem like they're pretty good, they're just not good enough.
Yeah, and to highlight that, it ended up trading for a Pelt Collector.
Exactly.
It was a 1-mana play. All right, well, it looks like Nassif likes this opener much better. This one has a Wicked Wolf and a pair of Voracious Hydra, as well as a Gilded Goose. If he can get out to that quick start and just start sniping any of the early plays, he can build himself a very stable board from which to work here.
Yeah. Javier does have a Pelt Collector himself, along with Paradise Druid and a Gruul Spellbreaker, so he's a pretty strong curve here, but is this curve good enough to stand up to a Wicked Wolf on the play with Mana Acceleration?
That is the question. Wicked Wolf, of course, throughout the course of the weekend, just wreaking havoc on any of the creature-based decks that it faces. Outperforming even Questing Beast pretty often. Now, against the Golos matchup, not so good. But only 1 Golos in our top 8 here, so these Wicked Wolves look fantastic. And yeah, it looks like we're going to see a Wicked Wolf next turn just gobble up a Pelt Collector.
And this is a big part of seeing the play versus the draw. Last game, even if Nassif had a Wicked Wolf, without food, he couldn't have killed the Pelt Collector. He couldn't have killed the Gruul Spellbreaker. Here, though, on the play, he's able to use the Wicked Wolf to kill the Pelt Collector before it can get out of range, and doesn't even have to use food to do it. And he still has a food left over, so that you want to hasten a Gruul Spellbreaker. Sorry, that's brickwalled.
Yep. Yeah, this Wicked Wolf looks like it's going to absolutely dominate. And, when you're sitting in Dominguez's seat, you just don't have answers for it.
It is not a card that a deck relying on green and red removal, which is essentially burn and fight effects, can really deal with. You got food up, okay, it's indestructible. Indestructible means I'm not killing it. I'm an honest green mage.
I sense some sympathy there from you. For
I do.
Javier.
I really do. I mean,
boy, this draw, by the way, has been epic for Nassif. Now he has double Voracious Hydra, but he can also play Nissa, who shakes the world, and then cap things off with a Hydroid Krasis when he finally runs out of gas. Just perfect here for Nassif.
Casting Nissa does mean he loses his food, which he gets a 3/3, but he can no longer indestructible his Wicked Wolf. So it is a brief sort of shields down moment for that wolf. And if, for instance,
it makes me nervous just thinking about it.
If, for instance, Javier has double Domer's Ambush, he can fight the wolf, fight the land, kill your Nissa.
That is a disaster.
So this is definitely a bit of a risk here from Nassif. It does set up his future turns very powerfully, but it is a moment that he has to be worried that the perfect cards from Javier could put him in a rough spot.
Right now, Javier does have one copy of Domri's Ambush in hand as well.
He finds another one.
Off the top.
He does!
It's exactly what he found, Brian. He has double Domri's Ambush.
This is absolutely huge. He can use his Domri's Ambush to punch the Wicked Wolf, punch the breeding pool, kill Nissa, leave Nassif with 3 land and a goose with no food.
Unbelievable. The double Voracious Hydra, Hydroid Krasis hand shrivels to nothing under these circumstances. And you are going to see a reaction here from Nassif. He's just like, come on, you can't have 2 copies of Domri's Ambush.
I mean, the gross thing is he even has the other red source too, so he doesn't even tap the Paradise Druid for mana.
Which gives him just enough. Well, I guess either the Spellbreaker itself could also kill Nissa, but my goodness sakes. Wow, what a draw there from Dominguez. What is he thinking about now?
I think that he might be considering just using the Paradise Druid for mana and playing the land tapped. I don't think that's a particularly meaningful consideration here.
He's just being very,
but
very
he's just being
careful.
Careful, right? He is in a strong position in a tough matchup.
And look at that head shake there from Nassif. He says, "Oh my God,
this is brutal." And this way, the Gruul Spellbreaker by itself kills Nissa. He can leave the Paradise Druid untapped to keep his Skargan Hellkite guaranteed online, even if there's, say, Land Voracious Hydra. He gets in 2 damage here, but he does run the risk of losing that Paradise Druid and stranding that Hellkite in his hand.
Yeah, it looks like he's going to get away with it this time. A Gilded Goose off the top of the library from Nassif means that he does have a little bit more mana going, but nothing really to do this turn, and he just has to pass the turn. An abject disaster last turn.
I mean, this is just
for Nassif.
A nightmare. This is everything that could go wrong did go wrong. I almost feel bad for describing exactly the scenario that happened.
That was a nice call,
and then
dude.
It came up.
All right, and everything in the red zone, 12 damage under assault is Gabriel Nassif. Remember, he's down a game here. It looked like he was in a position where he couldn't lose, but a timely top deck there from Javier Dominguez opened that door, and the house of cards that Nassif built came crashing down around him, and now his life total is under serious threat.
Yeah, this is just such a huge attack. We talked about the Simic mirrors, right? How when you fall behind, it's very difficult to come back because there are no sweeper effects. Nassif here, he could chump block the Skargan Hellkite. How does he get back into this? If he draws a, let's say, Aether Gust, it's the best possible draw. He can hit the Gruul Spellbreaker, but he can't even hit it on his opponent's turn. He has to let him draw it and can come back down with haste. I don't know that there's a way out of this for Nassif at all.
Nassif running the numbers now, trying to figure out if there's any possible way for him to get out of this mess.
Let's say he draws Wicked Wolf, okay? Wicked Wolf can come down. He can fight the Paradise Druid. It can't even chump block or block an Indestructible against the Spellbreaker because the Spellbreaker has Trample and the Hellkite flies.
This one might be in the books here for the Gruul Smasher, Javier Dominguez on the other side of the battlefield. It's Castle Garenbrig off the top. And you can see the look on Nassif's face. He's like, what does that even do for me at this point?
Making some food, making some mana. Or maybe not. If he does play the
is there anything he can do here?
His Hydra's not big enough to fight the Hellkite, right? Oh no, he's the Garenberg. Right, he can play with Castle Garenberg.
Yep.
So he can fight the Hellkite, so he doesn't die.
He does have to chump the Spellbreaker, though.
It does
and
one
still take
trample.
3. Yeah.
Right.
All right, so Voracious Hydra comes down, eats up the 4/4 flyer. It was just a land off the top of the library, but Javier's mode is simple here. Attack with both creatures. This forces the issue. 3 damage on Nassif puts him down to 3. But the 6/6 Gruul Spellbreaker is still over there.
He can make a gigantic Hydra now, right? You can play a Hydra for 1, 2, 3. You can make a 6/7 Hydra. Even more with Garenberg, right?
Yeah, and actually with the Paradise Druid, only 2 power is not quite enough. Oh
so
my goodness
this is
sakes.
not quite over, especially with that Hydroid Krasis in hand.
Now, we know, of course, that Javier has many outs
Oh, there's a
to
lot.
win the game. Any
There's
of
a
his
lot.
haste creatures, of which he has many, the deck is effectively built around them. Castle Garenbrig does get 6 mana here. Wow, Nassif is deep in the tank. This is not over. He definitely needs things to go perfectly from here on out, though. Javier certainly can't draw spells.
All right.
So he's just going to make a big Hydra here.
Yep.
This is an 8/9.
And he even has the Goose to chump block the Druid. So
Is
he
there
doesn't
anything
just
here? It's a Skargan Hellkite.
Well, but Skargan Hellkite gets chump blocked by Goose.
Unreal.
Skargan Hellkite gets chump blocked by Goose. So he only puts him, he ends up losing the Spellbreaker to the Hydra, gets in 2 damage, puts him to 1, but there's a Hydrid Krasis in hand.
Interesting.
The castle has been so huge here.
It has.
When I was looking at the ways that Nassif could survive, I was basically just looking at castle as a basic forest. And it is not. the additional mana that is provided him has been absolutely crucial in allowing him to take out that Hellkite and now survive to play this Hydra, which is keeping him alive. You see a little shake of the head from Nassif here. He's like, that's not good. You're not dead, but it's still precarious position.
Dominguez does decide to go for the haste portion for Riot on the Hellkite.
And one of the really big things here is the fact that the requirement to pay the 4 mana up front for Garenberg means that you don't have the blue to use Garenberg with the Krasis next turn too. So you actually just have to play it honest with your mana.
Because he's losing his Goose here.
Right.
Yeah. This is interesting. Look at this. Dominguez actually looking at perhaps throwing away the Spellbreaker to get in for 2 damage. He says, look, that Hydra's not going anywhere for the rest of this game. I may as well get it while the getting's good. Down to 1 goes Nassif.
This opens up just Shock or a Bone Crusher Giant. He does find Forest, so this means that he can actually Garenberg the Krasis. He needs to draw an untapped land there.
Yep. So Castle Garenbrig is going to get 6 mana here, and then you'll have the extra blue to help him stabilize. Oh my goodness sakes. Gabriel Nassif needs to find something good. It's Once Upon a Time, which actually might be okay, but he is still alive, and he's back up to 3.
And if that now outsizes the Hellkite. I mean, there are still a lot of cards that Dominguez can draw that will end the game on the spot. Ember Cleave, Collision Colossus. That is Questing Beast.
Questing Beast is not quite enough, but pretty good.
By 1 life.
Oh my
Questing
goodness.
Beast would be lethal. And it's also interesting to think, if Javier had not attacked the previous turn with the Spellbreaker.
Look at Nassif, he's loving this.
If Javier hadn't attacked the previous turn with Spellbreaker, now there's Questing Beast and the Spellbreaker.
Yes.
Which represent much more damage that's possibly getting through if they're unblocked. He got the 2 in, but that ended up being mitigated by the Krasis. Now, I mean, do you just attack with this Questing Beast? One of these has to block.
Yes.
And does he lose his Krasis, which is the only thing holding back the Hellkite? No, he loses his Voracious Hydra.
That's right.
And now your ground creatures are actual threats.
You can see now players are checking graveyards. They're thinking about outs. Javier Dominguez absolutely going to be thinking about what are the cards that could be on top of the library that can win me the game. He will force a trade thanks to the Questing Beast here and send that Voracious Hydra packing. You still got to feel like Dominguez is in a decent spot here.
He is, but as the breathing room opens for Nassif, he gets to play this Once Upon a Time, which gets him, looks at more possible things that can get him out of this. There's also that food token. The pressure that Javier has gotten in is being mitigated significantly by the fact that now that he is stabilized, now that he doesn't have to just spend all his mana to not die, he has
another Krasis.
Another Krasis is huge. But there's also the Love-Struck Beast, which can represent essentially brickwalling the ground. You end up getting the 1/1 and a 5/5, and you can do that now. So
you can do both of those now.
Right.
Huh. Oh man, this has been a sweet game.
It's been pretty crazy, and you have to look at so many options that players had. I mean, specifically how Javier chose to attack. You know, how Nassif managed his resources here. Looks like he is he just going to go for the Krasis here, or is he going to play the Paradise Druid as a blocker and just try and put the nail in the coffin? Yes.
That is what he's going to try to do. So he's maximizing his chances to actually win the game here by doing this.
The big part of this is that, okay, Paradise Druid, you know, blocking Paradise Druid, Krasis blocking the Hellkite, those line up. You have the food to go to 6. So right now, you actually don't even just die to an Embercleave.
Right.
Because you have the food.
Very nice. Yeah, cards like Gruul Spellbreaker come to mind as well with Trample. And it's a mountain off the top.
Mountain.
And look at Dominguez. Did this game just slip away from him? Gabriel Nassif never gave up, utilized Castle Garenbrig to get that critical extra mana to stabilize, and he's barely hanging on. But now it feels like he's starting to turn the corner on this thing.
It does, and I do want to go back to, you know, Javier's choice to effectively trade his Spellbreaker, his 6/6 Spellbreaker for 2 damage.
Yep.
He sent that in, and if you know, he now is threatening, okay, well now I have Questing Beast. You know, and you're forcing the Questing Beast possible trade with that Hydra. Your opponent having the food in play at that point too means that getting that damage only matters in terms of lethal outs for a turn, as long as they're able to answer what you have already. And if they can't answer it, they're dead anyway.
Nassif's running the numbers here, and it works out kind of interesting. If he activates Castle Garenbrig, that'll give him 6 mana with 2 left over in lands and then an additional from the Druid. So if he'd like to tap out completely, he can go Krasis for an even number plus Gilded Goose, or he can scale back a little bit if he'd like. And it looks like he's going to do that. Yep, and I like that too, because when you look at the board after it's all said and done, he's going to have 2 huge flying Hydrate Krasis, a 6/6 and a 5/5, and then a Gilded Goose as well. It's going to be, I don't think there's anything that can kill him from that point, right, at 9 life?
No, there's no individual card. Even, I mean, at this point, even if Javier finds Embercleave, he can double block with the 2 Krasis, end up killing the Hellkite and keeping a Krasis.
He's going to go to attackers to avoid the rope here. Oh, he actually didn't play the Goose.
And there's just land for Javier. This has slipped away. It was so close. And now even his Aether Gust.
Yeah, he's left up Aether Gust. So he wanted to make sure that he had that. He played the Breeding Pool untapped, did not play the Goose so that he could combine it with Paradise Druid and have Aether Gust available. And now a Voracious Hydra, and this one has fully slipped away from Dominguez. Boy, that was a crazy game. Nassif opened the door just ever so slightly, and Mr. Gruul said, smash, broke down the door, and looked like he had it in the bag. But Nassif never gave up, and now he's on the verge of winning this game and forcing the Game 3 decider. Incredible stuff.
Yeah, this has been so carefully navigated by Nassif. That castle coming in so big, just narrowly getting him over the mana breakpoints he needed to stay in this game, and now he is firmly in the driver's seat. Once upon a time, there was a Skargan Hellkite, but it's not enough.
Not enough. Aether Gust is going to handily take care of that, and that is going to be game number 2, going to Gabriel Nassif. Well played, and he even earns the applaud of the onlookers here. Fantastic stuff, though. Still got another game to go.
We do. I mean, that was game 2. This is not a match that's been decided.
I'm stoked. I want to see another game between these two.
Yeah, I mean, if it's anything like that one, it's gonna be a nail biter. I'm really thinking back.
That attack.
Well, yeah. It's not even just the attack. I mean, there was the attack. Javier also could have just played Hellkite with a +1/+1 counter.
Yes. And
that would have forced Nassif to have Voracious Hydra to kill it, or Aether Gust over the course of turns. Right. I still. You know, there's pros and cons to that, because if you attack right away, you get rid of your opponent's Goose. They have to jump block with Goose, right? And I feel like leaving them with the Goose up as a food generator or a mana generator are both dangerous. So I think I do like his choice to haste it, but I'm not sure I like the choice to attack with a Spellbreaker.
Okay. Yeah, you can see Javier's style with this deck is very much on the aggressive, and when given a chance, he usually will take the most aggressive route possible. This is an interesting opener here for Nassif. He has perhaps his best card in the matchup, Wicked Wolf. There's been a whole bunch of lands in a Once Upon a Time.
And this hand from Javier is okay. See a little bit shake of the head. It is. It's not something that he's thrilled about by any means.
Not in love with it, yeah.
But he does have Zertog Goblin with Domer's Ambush, which can allow him to at least get an early creature down, possibly take out a goose. And the Embercleave is good if he gets additional creatures to back it up, but it's pretty bad on its own right here.
Nassif's still tanking on whether he wants to keep this hand, and he's decided against it.
Oof, look at that pained expression as this draw comes up.
Boy, even if you replace that Once Upon a Time with a land, so slow, even though it has triple Wicked Wolf.
Yeah, Lovestruck Beast is the big card in this hand, though. Lovestruck Beast in this hand does buy you so much time if you do get to your third mana, and between Temple of Mystery and Once Upon a Time, you have a lot of opportunities to find that.
Is this a keep?
I think it has to be. I think you send a Wolf back, yeah. If it weren't for Lovestruck Beast, I think maybe you have to go mulliganing with this. But the Lovestruck Beast is so powerful in this matchup and does so much work for so low mana cost that I think that you have to hold on to this.
By the way, this turn 0 Once Upon a Time has a lot riding on it as well, because we just sort of swapped it in for a land, but let's see if he finds a land with his draw step. No.
I mean, he does have the look from Once Upon a Time and then Temple of Mystery, so it's actually kind of 7 cards deep for land number 2.
So he's like basically a hard log.
Yeah, and I like this from Nassif using the Temple first, because if you do hit a land, you don't want to Once Upon a Time.
You can wait to draw the land and then Once Upon a Time.
Exactly.
And that all but guarantees Nassif hitting his third land drop, which was really kind of the critical number that you mentioned before, getting into that Lovestruck Beast territory here. So here comes Once Upon a Time, because he is going to cast Heart's Desire this turn.
All right, and finds another Temple of Mystery, which he could play right now.
Yeah, that seems good.
It's also a Paradise Druid, so if he does take the Paradise Druid, he can play that and hope to draw land to Wicked Wolf immediately. He doesn't have any food, and he's placing a 3/3, so it's less powerful Accelerate out than it might otherwise be. There's also his heroic castle from last game.
Yeah, Castle Garenbrig did serious work for him, though it does kind of feel like at this point he may need something with a little more immediacy.
I think I like the Temple, personally, because it gives you another look, because you still want to find your 4th land. Your hand is Wicked Wolf, Nissa. So I think that Nassif is looking to set up for, there's we see Nassif's expression there. That's land number 4, but that comes into play tapped. So you want to play a 3 next turn. You want to play your Lovestruck Beast or Oko, depending on the board state. And then you want to be able to play your 4 the following turn. Maybe keeping this means you play 3 into 3.
Right, he can play Oko and then you Lovestruck Beast, something like that, or whichever direction.
Yeah.
So he's going to go for Heart's Desire here. And he did end up keeping the Temple of Mystery, so he's drawn all 3. Or 3 of those.
That's Pelt Collector not on time for Javier.
Yeah, he's just going to have to skip that one for now and go right to the Gruul Spellbreaking.
And it's a 4/4, which is important size alongside the Domer's Ambush against Lovestruck Beast, as well as with the Embercleave.
So Dominguez setting up nicely for the card he knows is coming, the Lovestruck Beast, at least at some point.
Right. And Domer's Ambush is hugely important here. This card would otherwise completely brick wall Javier's entire offense, but thanks to Domer's Ambush, he can just punch through it.
And this is huge, because that is going to be 8 power coming across the red zone here with just a 1/1 left to block. And the Embercleave waiting in the wings as well.
That's an enormous amount of damage here that Javier is able to pump out, and that represents Embercleave lethal next turn.
It looks like Javier was actually considering Embercleave.
You hear that slow roll?
That slow roll. That's
Nassif is not what to claim about anyone else doing anything slowly. Let's
if I'm Dominguez, I think I'd get an eye roll there. I'd be like, come on, buddy. But I think that was also kind of the joke from Nassif. Wow, 8, and down to 9 goes Nassif. A Pelt Collector follow-up, but that Embercleave is looming. Can he do anything about it?
No, I mean, even if Nassif had untapped land this turn to play a Wicked Wolf can fight the Pelt Collector, but that Embercleave just kills him next turn. He can Oko.
And Oko just makes his problems worse here.
Make the 1/1 a 3/3. But that's still just lethal damage being represented by Embercleave next turn.
Javier Dominguez, one slipped away from him the prior game, but he has had just the right sequence here to line up and get the job done with Embercleave once again. finishing things off. And the Gruul Smasher looks like he's going to advance to the finals of the upper bracket here.
And Nassif's trying to find any way out. He knows that Embercleave means he is dead. But he's going to try and figure out, how do I beat a draw that doesn't have that? And he's going to get the bad news as soon as he passes priority back.
Yeah, Javier has it hovered over the Embercleave, but he can't actually cast it until he has priority. And once it goes on the stack, you know that Nassif is kind of waiting for it. He says, yeah, he's probably got it. Looks like I'm done here. Now he hits block, and there comes the Embercleave. And he says, good game. That is Javier Dominguez advancing once again. And look how excited he is.